Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sunny and Phoenix podcast, a weekly podcast where we keep you up to date on everything Phoenix Suns basketball. And hey, do you guys remember a couple episodes ago, it was episode 68, where we said, what happens if the Suns don't get to draft Markelle Fultz or Lonzo Ball? Well, that just happened. We saw that lottery. We dropped to the 4 spot. We're going to do some talking about that today. I'm Charlie Erling. I have Mitch Krumpetich and David McGraw with me. What's going on, guys?
Well, I'm here in the flesh today, in the Valley of the Sun. And it was a really nice day today. I'm really happy to be here. And I know I can see David through the computer screen. He's looking high-key jelly right now.
I'm super jelly. Like, there's definitely high-key about it. There's no low-key. I am in the state of the sun, but that's about it. We're so close. I'm so close to you guys, but also too far away to do anything about it.
Make sure to get a hold of us on social media. Our Twitter is @SunnyandPHXPod. Our email is sunnyandphxpod@gmail.com. And check us out over at our new host, the Deepish Thoughts Podcast Network, over at deepishthoughts.com.
Thanks for listening to the Sunny and Phoenix podcast. If you'd like to further support the show, you can head over to tpublic.com/user/sunnyandphx. That's teepublic.com/user/sunnyandphx. We've got t-shirts, mugs, phone cases, all kinds of stuff. You can get our famous Cheese is Warming Up design, or just one that says Sunny and PHX. Again, tpublic.com/user/Sunny and PHX. And go Suns.
Okay, so let's talk about this draft lottery a little bit, and it did not go the way we expected it to or wanted it to. It ended up with the Celtics keeping that number 1 pick, the Lakers jumping 2 spots to pick second, and then the Sixers getting that 3 spot. So, I guess the big question is right off the bat, did we just lose the draft? Especially if we don't get Ball, Fultz, and Jackson. And was this tank of a season meaningless now because we're not getting a top 3 pick? What do you think, David?
So I was really afraid kind of going into this, and even in episode 68, while I didn't want to say it and I wasn't going to say it because I didn't want to just jinx us, I was very afraid that we were going to end up with the 4 pick. It just feels like a very Suns thing to do, and while I don't want that to sound as negative as it is, with the rhetoric kind of last season about how number 4 was kind of the earliest we had ever really drafted, and haven't really drafted before that. And I think the closest we ever were to like a 1 pick was when we had the coin flip for Kareem. So I kind of was expecting to fall back, maybe not fall back to 4, but at least to 3. And I was really nervous that we were going to end up falling back to 4. I didn't want to say it, didn't want to jinx us, but it happened, and it's unfortunate, but because of this draft, I don't think it's as unfortunate because of the depth. And I know that there's the talk of depth every year, except for maybe last year where there was a little bit less talk about the depth going in. I think that if we were going to fall back, this is definitely the draft to do it. And I think you guys might agree, but there is a lot of talent in this draft and a lot of talk of who could go anywhere really from 3. I mean, even 2 and 3 are kind of discussed of who should be picked there, but also from 3 or 4 to 8 or 9. So it really is kind of up in the air, and all the guys are pretty close talent-wise.
Yeah, well, I went through kind of a whirlwind of emotions during the draft lottery and seeing those results. So my original thought was, after seeing like Joel Embiid and his reactions and everyone thinking it's so funny and Booker looking kind of defeated, I just thought, we got memed, and we got memed hard in this lottery. But the more I think about it, the more I'm okay with it because of what you just said, is that there's so much depth and there's a lot of good players, even in the top 5. And right now we're seeing a lot of talk of like Fox really rising, possibly Malik Monk really rising to the top 5, possibly. Those kind of things. So that gives me some hope that Josh Jackson will still be available for us at 4. The other thing is, I've mentioned it before on the show, but I'm a big Bledsoe fan, and I haven't given up on him. So I don't exactly want to draft a point guard, and I think a strong wing player might be better. So I'm kind of happy that our chances of getting Lonzo Ball went down. I don't really like Lonzo Ball either, so that helps.
Yep, I'm with you there, for sure. And I kind of view it as the top 5 of this draft being one step above the maybe 5 through or 6 through 8 or 9. I just feel safe picking pretty much any of those guys in the top 5. The obvious Ball and Fultz, and then Jackson or Tatum or even Fox. I mean, I think those guys are all solid picks, worth a top 5 pick too. So really, I don't think we're killing ourselves over this, but just that opportunity we had, the freedom we had, say we got that second pick, we didn't have to draft Ball.
Right.
We could have got Jackson. We could have even traded the pick to the Lakers saying, hey, we're going to take Ball. What are you going to do about it? I would have loved to see that happen.
Right.
And, you know, man, just speaking about getting memed at that draft, I can't get that Magic Johnson shimmy. After he found out he was getting the second pick, he was doing a little bit of that business. David and Mitch saw what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That just hit me the wrong way. And especially with the comments before the draft about how like Coach Walton said, oh, Magic already told me we're getting a top 3 pick. And then Magic guaranteeing it's going to be a top 3 pick. I mean, yeah, write it off as us being salty Suns fans, but that was tough to see.
I didn't like that.
It was a little, like, too much, but at the same time, whenever Magic says stuff like that, it seems like that's kind of just a very Magic thing to say. I think now that he's a GM, it's a little bit more like, or not GM, president of basketball operations or whatever, it's a little bit more like, maybe you shouldn't say that kind of stuff, even though, like, when it was just on Twitter and him saying that stuff, it was thought of as just, like, dumb confidence. And I think that now that he is a president of basketball operations, we kind of just look into it more. I mean, there's talk every year about the draft being rigged and how, like last year, like, because how rare it is for the person with the best odds to keep the first pick, that, you know, because the 76ers outed Sam Hinkie, that the NBA was better for him. And, you know, that's all different stuff and different things. I don't think the lottery's rigged. I think that percentages just suck with the lottery.
I agree. And when the Suns get shafted, we're obviously going to say something about it. We're going to bring it up. But
Yeah.
that's how it
We're
goes.
going to get really
that brings
mad,
up a-
and then we're going to go into acceptance. It's like the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But David, do you believe in magic?
The team or the
in a
guy?
young girl's heart?
Wait, what?
No, in a young girl's heart.
No.
Oh, okay.
Sad. Sad. Okay. So let's keep it moving on here, and we'll get a little bit more into the beef of it. So we think that Fultz is going 1, Ball's going 2, and then that leaves Sixers with that 3 pick. Who do you think makes the most sense for them with that one? What do you think, Mitch?
I think they should probably go with some international guy we've never heard of. I think that would be really smart. No, I mean, it's tough. The Sixers need shooting. So you would think they would go guard and maybe not someone like Josh Jackson, who were unsure of his shot. So I've heard De'Aaron Fox's name rising up to go in the top 5, and like I said, Malik Monk. I think that would make sense, but I truly think that Josh Jackson would be the best player available at that point, and that's just what teams are doing. It's a positionless league. Teams are going with the best player available rather than need. They can find shooters in other places, so I think it makes most sense for them to go Jackson, but I don't know that they will.
The only problem with finding shooters in other places is that you already have Ben Simmons penciled in at starting, I guess, small forward, but they're going to claim that they're starting him at a point guard because everyone has a fascination of saying that their ball handler is a point guard now, even though James Harden was still a shooting guard last year, but he was a point guard. Whatever. That's besides the point. But that makes me think that the Sixers might reach for a different player instead of Josh Jackson because of the fact that Ben Simmons is already penciled in, and adding another questionable shooter may not be the best move. That being said, Josh Jackson could easily play the 2, and I think in a recent interview at the draft lottery or something like that, he said that he thought he was playing out of position at Kansas. So, I mean, he could easily play the 2, and they could make a defensive kind of stalwart in Philadelphia if they wanted to, with whoever at point guard, then Ben Simmons or Josh Jackson, Dario Saric probably, and then Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I think whatever lineup the 76ers throw up, same thing. Whatever they put out this season, it's going to be interesting. Just I don't know. For some reason, I just really think of Tatum being a better fit than Jackson with the Sixers right now. Just that shooting that he brings, I think that that'd be a nice way to kind of balance things out with Simmons, as Simmons isn't the best outside shooter. But yeah, Fox would make a lot of sense for them too. He's a really athletic guard that can probably guard the point, maybe some 2, if it's not one of those big, bulky 2 guards. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. So we think it's either Jackson, Tatum, or Fox pretty much. So that kind of leaves things interesting for what's going to happen for us when we discuss that.
And I would honestly argue that maybe even Fox isn't as much of the guard to pick for them, and why Malik Monk has kind of gotten some rise is because of the projected better range because of Fox's season, or college season. So I'd almost put Fox in the same category as Jackson of, would they really draft them or draft him when they already need shooting? So that'd be my question there, and why I would think that almost Malik Monk might be a better fit at guard for them, but that I feel like that'd be way too much of a reach.
Maybe they trade that pick to a team for a good shooter.
They could. I would think that if they were to trade the pick, they would try and get another lottery pick plus a shooter.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe they... I don't know why Zach LaVine went into my head first, because that's not going to happen. But my first thought was Zach LaVine and the Wolves pick for the 3, and then they get Josh Jackson to give them more defense, but I don't think that would happen at all.
I don't know. It's going to be really interesting because that pick is what seals our fate, basically. Well, obviously.
Yeah, and really right now we have no direction to run with that. We don't know what they're going to do yet, so that just leaves things up in the open here. So let's say Ball, Fultz, and Jackson are the top 3. And is Jason Tatum the kind of guy that you think would thrive here with the Suns? I think he might be a nice guy to pair up with TJ Warren running that 3.
Yeah, I think that's something that we talked about on 68, that we were all saying we would all be pretty satisfied with. I think the majority, or all of us, like Jackson more because of his defense, but Tatum's a good player. The more tape I watch of him, the more I see him fitting well. Maybe that's just because we have the 4 pick now, and I've accepted that, but I don't know. I really do see him being a good fit here.
I'm really nervous about Tatum. I don't know what it is. I feel kind of Tobias Harris-y vibes from him. And
I see that.
While Tobias Harris first starting up before, he kind of didn't, or stopped getting better. I would say it was getting mellow light vibes, like mellow, like very much light vibes, discount mellow. But while that was there, I just am very nervous about projecting someone to be too good. And I know I joked way too much about Buddy Hield being way better than he would be. But, at the end of the season when he was in Sacramento, he kind of made up a little bit for that. So
He shined.
He
shined in Sacramento.
So, I'm not going to say that was a total. I mean, like, it was too much. And I know that. Don't say that. Well, you said all that stuff about how Buddy Hield could be James Harden. Light. And, I know. I was in the moment. Leave me alone. Anyways, so Jason Tatum just kind of scares me a little bit, and why I kind of think that Fox is higher than him on my big board. And I don't know, just that Tobias Harris thing kind of scares me. Even though Tobias Harris isn't a bad player, just that he kind of got to a point and then stalled.
So you like Fox. What does that mean for Ulis and Bledsoe? Do you think both of those guys deserve minutes? One of them should get traded if we draft Fox? What do you think?
I mean, my first thought is honestly to just run some sort of
three guards?
I was
three
just gonna
guards?
say 3 guards.
three guards. I mean, like, we kind of ran 2 point guard lineups if you consider Barbosa a point guard or a shooting guard. I mean, he's kind of like a combo-y guy. And so if you ran Barbosa and Ulis off the bench, then running Fox and Ulis off the bench probably wouldn't be the worst thing. And, like, while that'd be kind of interesting shooting-wise, I feel like Ulis and Fox will get better from the line, so there's that. And I think that kind of starts grooming Fox to be the starter, and kind of Ulis to be his backup, while still not necessarily putting a clock on Bledsoe, but letting him continue to play out at least this contract.
That is interesting.
Okay, so just to wrap things up, I asked this a little earlier, but I think I want some firm answers on this. If we're missing out on Fultz, Ball, and Jackson, was this tank not worthwhile? What do you guys think?
I'm going to say that the tank was worthwhile only because we were able to give Chris and Ulis and Derek Jones Jr. and Big Sauce more running time and kind of let them go wild. I think that because of that, it was worth it. I think that if Bender would have been healthy, it would have been good for him. And just because of that, I think it was good. But, I mean, I don't think it would have mattered if we would have won a couple extra games. And obviously, it didn't. But, it's tough because I don't like tanking to begin with. But at the same time, you got to give yourself the best odds. But just because of the youth development, I don't think it was a waste of time.
And I agree with that. The other thing is, it goes back to something Chuck said earlier, was that there's a big difference between the top 5 and the 6 through 9 range in this draft. So I think just getting top 5 is okay. If we would have won a few more games and landed like the 7 pick, let's say, I think that would have been a lot more disappointing than 4.
So my big stink with the whole thing is how we shut down Bledsoe. I can get over the Chandler deal because he's old, he needs his rest, and we probably prolonged his career by a little bit by doing this. But I could see Bledsoe being pretty upset. Best season of his career, playing great ball, healthy all season, and then he just gets yanked from the lineup towards the end of the season. That can't do a ton of good for his morale. And I wonder if the Suns were banking on that 1 or 2 to bring in Fultz or Ball and ship Bledsoe off. I just hope that didn't cause much of a rift between Bledsoe and the front office from that happening. But that's really my only stink about it.
Well, that's a really good point. Oh,
Yeah, that is an extremely good point. And the idea that, Bledsoe could have taken things the wrong way with us trying to get one of those guards. I still think that we wouldn't. I mean, like, even though it would make sense to trade him, I still feel like if we would have gotten to 1 or 2, we would have figured out some sort of way to make everyone mesh before we have to send someone out. But I totally can understand if Bledsoe is a little flustered, but at the same time, played 66 games, so he missed out on 16 games. And if those 16 games maybe make it so he doesn't blow out a meniscus again next year, I'm okay with that.
Very
I
true.
think honestly,
Yeah.
if he's able to stay healthy next year, then shutting him down was a good move.
You know what? It's probably tough running a basketball team, a professional basketball team.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little.
I assume so. But let's move things on a little bit. David, you found something pretty cool on the old Reddit machine. It's called Model284.com, and it's a similarity score generator for players in this year's draft, and it compares their college season to other college seasons from other pro players or even prospects in this draft. So it just gives you a good idea of who those guys played like during this season. So let's start things off, and I'll just kind of read through the list, and then maybe we can talk about what stands out the most. But the 10 guys who had seasons most like Markel Fultz's season this year are Terrence Williams, Isaiah Whitehead, Jamal Crawford, Dennis Smith, Lonzo Ball, Derrick Rose, Chris Dunn, Jamal Tinsley, Isaiah Cousins, and Antonio Burks. So I'm not going to lie, I haven't heard of a few of those guys, which is a little worrisome. But we do know guys like Jamal Crawford and then Dennis Smith and Ball from this year, D. Rose, Chris Dunn. See, these are all a little surprising, but you can catch a peek from some of them. So what sticks out about these to you guys?
Yeah, this is interesting, and I think taking into account that this is college seasons makes it a little bit more understandable. I know that everyone is kind of quick right now to jump on the bust label for Chris Dunn, but I think you also have to kind of remember what he was doing last year. I thought he was playing pretty well in college, and so did a lot of other people, so there's that. But, I mean, I think the big thing is having Jamal Crawford and Derrick Rose as a possible comparison. All those guys are kind of different players. Some sort of blend of those guys kind of makes sense for a comparison for Markel Fultz this season, because he kind of was able to do everything and just put everything kind of a bad team on his back and play and do the best he could. So, I mean, it makes sense. And with kind of, if you look at combining those two guys, that attributes here and there would work out.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too because there's such a wide range of possibilities for all of these guys, really. And I think it goes to show how the top three especially, there's just a lot unknown. We'll get more into that with some of the later round guys too, but I mean, all of these guys, there's just so much unknown, so many great possibilities. I mean, the difference between Isaiah Whitehead and Derrick Rose, that's huge. That's a huge range. So landing anywhere in between those two could be pretty good or pretty bad. So it just goes to show that you never really know what you're going to get until you actually see them on the court in the NBA.
If I could smash two of those guys together to make a Fultz, I'd probably go with Crawford and D. Rose. If we're going to just get silly with it, I think that'd be my combination there.
I mean, when trying to do similarities for players, it's really hard in general because, I mean, what was it that we were talking about? Things that we could hope for with players. I think Booker was like, okay, if he could become like Klay Thompson with slightly less defense but a better playmaker, it's like that. Then that's not really Klay Thompson, but you get the idea. So really, when we're trying to compare players, we are kind of almost blending two or three different things together, and I think doing that here is probably going to be what's needed anyways as well, I guess is what I was trying to say.
Right on. So let's move over to Lonzo Ball. I'll read these off quick. Raymond Felton. Nick, someone help me with that last name.
Calathes?
We used to play for the Grizzlies.
Calathes?
Is it Calathes?
I don't know.
Calathis? Something like that. Oh, he was the guy that went bald, and then he took some sort of baldness cure, and it had some sort of performance enhancement in it, and I think he got banned from the league. For
And he got
part of
graft versus host disease.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, okay.
Someone please catch that
Nick
reference.
Calathes. There we go. Okay, and then we got Dennis Smith, Omar Cook, Darren Williams, Trey Burke, Cameron Payne, Jamal Tinsley, Chris Dunn, and Mateen Cleaves. So, another interesting lineup of guys here. And I was really expecting to see someone more along the lines of like Tyler Ennis or Kendall Marshall or Michael Carter Williams. Just those guys that were known as to be like, oh, great passers. They're going to change the game with the way they pass the ball. But none of those guys are on there. So maybe that's a good sign for Ball.
Yeah,
I think so.
I was really expecting. Everyone wants to throw out things like Jason Kidd and all this other stuff for Lonzo. I think Magic people are trying to throw out or have been trying to throw out, but none of those really ever made sense to me. And maybe this kind of shows why those things didn't make sense. But I was expecting a few more kind of lanky, tall point guards that were heavy distributors in college. But we really didn't get those. And I was expecting, like, MCW on this list. But I wasn't expecting people like Darren Williams or Trey Burke for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I was not expecting Darren Williams on there. But the thing that I think is this kind of shows... This is kind of hard to say because I'm not a big Lonzo Ball fan. But I think it shows that he has this great opportunity to be an extremely unique player.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that'd be well, that's definitely a good way to wrap up these 10 player comparisons because man, those are tough to relate to, I guess.
Right. Well, I mean, I think some of the other ones that we're about to get into will make a little bit more sense. But these two, Fultz as well, I think these comparisons show that both of them can be super unique.
All right, then we move on to Josh Jackson, and this is where things seem to make a bit more sense. We got the most like Josh Jackson this season was actually Jason Tatum over in Duke. And then we got another guy from the draft, Tyler Lydon, Lydon, not sure how to pronounce
That's
that.
what I would say, so.
I'll learn it soon. But then we got Justice Winslow, Luol Deng, Luke Babbitt, Gordon Hayward, Mike Miller, Carrick Felix, Maurice Harkless, and Kelly Oubre. So that's starting to really make some sense to me. I can see Jackson filling roles somewhat like Winslow, somewhat like Dang. But, man, when you throw guys in like Hayward and Miller, that confuses me a little bit. Not because they're white, but because they were good perimeter shooters.
Well, yeah, and I see this. It's a very interesting spectrum that you have there. Anywhere between Justice Winslow and Gordon Hayward. I kind of think that's a cool way to look at it, though, to see Josh Jackson landing anywhere between those two. Like, having more of that defensive ability, but if he can get that three-point shot, I like the Gordon Hayward comparison. So I think that's probably the most interesting guy on this comparison chart because of those two.
See, I look at one of the comparisons and I think like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? I look at Luol Deng and think about what he did before the injuries in Chicago and think that that's like a pretty solid comparison. I think that Josh Jackson can be better, of course, but I think that the Luol Deng comparison is a really solid one. And if you think of just Luol Deng now, where he's not very good, it doesn't make sense. But if you think back to like what he was able to do in Chicago before the failed spinal tap and all that garbage, like I think that's a comparison that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, just an all-around athletic guy that can get it done in a lot of facets in the game, and especially on defense. That's where I really see the comparison. So that's pretty cool. I like those Jackson comparisons. So we'll move over to Tatum. And then, actually, the most like Tatum was Luol Deng, followed by Wilson Chandler, Justice Winslow, Otto Porter, Kelly Oubre, Tyler Lydon, Josh Jackson, Jason Richardson, Quincy Miller, and Luke Babbitt. So we see some of those similarities, but the one that really pops off to me is Wilson Chandler. I can see those two games very similar, and I hope that's not a ceiling for Tatum.
I mean, Wilson Chandler has been a solid player for how many years now? And I mean, like, if you get a solid player in the draft, that's sometimes all you can really hope for. I think that because of the upside, that's kind of why Tatum has started to drop a little bit, and why guys like Fox and Monk have been talked about more in that 4 to 5 range. I was kind of surprised not to see Tobias Harris on this, but I think that the Wilson Chandler comparison is just about spot on and is a very similar role, and I like that comparison a lot.
Yeah, and this whole thing just goes to show how similar Tatum and Jackson really are.
Very true. Okay, now we'll go back to the guards. We'll talk about... I gotta ask, is it De'Aaron or Darren?
It's De'Aaron.
De'Aaron.
I've heard Darren on... I think it was on TV.
Huh.
So
Yeah, no, it's I'm like almost 95% positive that it's supposed to be De'Aaron.
Well, if you listen to the show, you know I enjoy butchering names, so I'm just going to call him Darren. So his top 10 are Tyler Ennis, Chris Duhon, Marcus Teague, Russell Westbrook, Derrick Rose, Armand Johnson, then Drew Holiday, one of the bigger busts and sillier picks in draft history I can think of, Johnny Flynn, Ramon Sessions, and Kenny Satterfield. So, I mean, I think we got to talk about the Russell Westbrook, Derrick Rose type combination we see here from Fox first.
I mean, I said it in episode 68 that kind of a Westbrook light was something that you could possibly see from De'Aaron Fox. And if you go through, especially Draft Express, some of his strength and weaknesses videos, if you watch, or even just highlights of him, he has a Westbrook kind of vibe. Not nearly, I think, the athlete at all, because Westbrook, and even pre every injury on the planet, Derrick Rose, their athleticism was off the charts. And I don't think De'Aaron Fox is quite there, but that's not saying much, because I don't think many players are right there. I think that if you watch Fox, you can totally see the potential to be a Westbrook kind of player. And you see the biting on steals, you see the running in transition, you see just the type of game in general. It's a very attack-oriented style of play, and I think that I was gonna be upset if that comparison wasn't on the comparison thing, and it was, so I'm not as upset.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said is right on, and it just shows, well, the next couple here show really an interesting range, anywhere from Tyler Ennis to Russell Westbrook. That's kind of scary.
Yeah. His season was most like Tyler Ennis's, but 4th and 5th most like Westbrook and Rose, so that'd be a fun gamble to take, huh?
I mean, like, that's kind of with the whole, like, kind of gut feeling that Fox could be way higher than he was originally going to be picked at, and whatever, is kind of because of that, hey, if he has that possibility to be like that, I mean, Westbrook was way later, was supposed to be later than a 3 pick, but that's where he got picked, and look where he is now. So you're going to take that athletic upside every day.
Right.
That's true.
So Fox is a guy that, you know, if we're going off these lists right here, I'd be worried about passing a guy like him up. And that brings us to another guy that if we're going off this list, he might be another tough one to pass up. Jonathan Isaac. His top 10 go Chris Bosh, TJ Leaf, Dedrick Lawson, Anthony Bennett, Alexander Johnson, and then Kevin Durant, Kyle Kuzma, Marvin Williams, Jamal Franklin, and Josh Childress. You guys remember him here in Phoenix. So, but yeah, we're talking Chris Bosh and Kevin Durant comparisons when it comes to this. Fox with Westbrook and D Rose. So these are two pretty big time ones. And, you know, we don't bank on this. What's this called? I gotta check it out. Model284.com. We don't bank on this by any means.
We just think it's fun.
Man, it's fun. And
yeah.
when we're talking Bosh and Durant type player, I mean, that's fun to talk about.
I just think it shows how much upside there is. But that Anthony Bennett, oh, that's so scary. It's so scary. He could be such a flop. But, I mean, I love the Chris Bosh comparison. He's a tough one. Like, it makes me think what happens if we trade down to, like, the 6th pick or something like that, and then draft a guy like Isaac if he's still there.
Yeah,
It's
Isaac is very interesting, and he's kind of reminding me right now of how Marquise Chris was thought of in the draft last year, and how everyone started putting him higher up just because of his potential, and how, like, he obviously still has to grow a lot, but the potential is there to be great. And besides taller Draymond Green comparisons with Isaac, I think Chris Bosh as a ceiling, while it doomed Noah Vonleh kind of to start, I think it makes sense with just how different Isaac's game is and how unknown it really is of what he could be able to do. And I mean,
right.
Pete Chris Bosh in Toronto was amazing. And I mean, like, even Chris Bosh in Miami, he was a huge part of the reason why they were able to do all the things they did with him as a small ball 5, even though he was still like 6'10", 6'11", and could guard centers. So I think that the possibility of being a Chris Bosh is ridiculous, and almost more, I mean, like Kevin Durant also, of course, but like either of those guys as, like, he's kind of able to protect the rim, able to defend at different spots, able to space the floor is why I think that in mocks he is pushed higher and probably won't go that high, but should be looked at.
So I like that. A guy that can protect the rim, a guy that can stretch the floor with some nice height. That just makes me think of Chris and Bender. Would Isaac be a guy that, another kind of tweener type guy, would that be good for our rotation, do you think? Or would that just be too much of uncertainty when it comes to matching up with guys?
Well, you know, when it comes to Chris and Bender, we talked about playing them at both forward spots almost as much as playing them at the 4 and 5. So if you add Jonathan Isaac into the mix, I think that the versatility and switchability from 3 through 5 at that point is kind of ridiculous and very how modern NBA is going. I think it's possibly a little too much, but I mean, it's all those guys. I mean, we talked about how Bender and Chris could play together and how they could complement each other, especially because of the way they were able to handle the ball. I think that adding Isaac into the mix, while maybe a reach at 4, also would make sense and would add another level to the type of positionless basketball that the NBA is going towards.
All right, good points, David. So let's move on to Malik Monk, and we'll get into his top 10 similarity scores. We have Jamal Murray, Randy Foye, O.J. Mayo, John Diebler, Luke Kennard, A.J. Guyton, Bronson Koenig, something, Wayne Ellington, Langston Galloway, and then Quincy Doobie. Quincy Doobie, that's a solid name.
That's a
I know
great
that.
name. That is a great name.
But with Monk, you can see the Foy, the Mayo, even the Murray there. So I like how those top 3 similarity scores panned out there.
And I think that one is more accurate because I see Malik Monk as this role player, Randy Foye type, and I think he's just going to fit that mold really well. I think this one is more accurate, more just predictive. Is that a
Yes.
word?
Yeah, predictable.
Predictable. Yeah.
Even Ellington too. He fits right in there as
Right.
well.
Yeah, solid role player.
He's just one of those guys where I think it's more you know what you're going to get rather than the question marks.
See, my only hang up on Malik Monk is that I feel like last year we talked a lot about how Jamal Murray was having the Devin Booker effect of how people didn't want to pass on another Devin Booker type of player. And Jamal Murray had a good season. And while he has a slightly different game than Booker, it makes sense. And I think Malik Monk is kind of in that same boat of just maybe these Kentucky shooting guards that are these one-and-dones that show some athletic ability and some shooting ability you just kind of don't want to pass on just in case. And that kind of one hang-up is the only hang-up I have in Malik Monk, and also why I'm afraid to pass on him if I were at the 5 pick. I'd be pretty afraid to pass on him just because of that possibility, but also why I'm super wary of what he's actually going to become.
Right. You know, it sounds like how we were explaining him. Like, that's probably how we would have described Devin Booker on this podcast pre-draft of Devin Booker. So, yeah, those comparisons are pretty solid, but, I mean, yeah, that's the risk you got to take. Is he going to turn into Devin Booker, or is he just going to be a shooting guard that really never gets off the bench?
Right. This is going to be an interesting draft.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely. Okay, and it's time to wrap things up the way we always do. It's time for David's Comic Book Corner, Mitch's Face Melting Minute, and then I'll have something random for you. So, David.
So I'm
get
not
us
going to
going.
plug the podcast Up Geek Creek this time, even though I kind of just plugged it there. But that's besides the point. We're working on another episode, and it'll be fun. And that's news to Mitch and Chuck, but we are.
Okay.
But the book
Sounds
that I
good.
want to talk about and plug this week is something that I would have never actually picked up, but I got it, and it's pretty fun. It's called Batman: Death by Design by Chip Kidd and Dave Taylor. Chip Kidd is not a graphic novel writer or anything. He is a actual writer, and it's this Batman book that's kind of set in the 50s, 60s. One of the main foils is this Rocketeer looking dude, and he's not really a foil. He's kind of like another good guy, kind of, but you don't know what's up. It's all in black and white. There are no colors. It's just black, white, and grayscale. It's a really beautiful looking book, and it's a fun detective story that you don't always read with Batman because he's too busy being the greatest thing at everything. But it's a lot of fun. I would check it out. Batman: Death by Design by Chip Kidd and Dave Taylor.
Good stuff. I'll hop in with a quick one here. So, I've had a buddy that has been telling me to watch the television show Jericho for years now. And I thought, hey, you know what? The other night I wasn't doing much. I said, I'm going to give it a shot. Watched an episode. That turned into 2. Then I watched 3 before I had to give it up. But it was a show that was canceled in its 2nd season. And it was one of those kind of it had a cult following. It wasn't too popular when it was on cable when it started, but it caught on later. Kind of like how Arrested Development blew up after it got canceled. One of those type deals. Mm-hmm. But it's a show about a nuclear fallout here in the U.S., which is probably a tough show to have on cable TV, so maybe that's why it got canceled. But it's just a small town in Kansas, and they're doing all these things to prepare and then move along from it. And I've just had a blast watching it, and I'm ready to get into some more. So, I mean, if you have a boring night like me and you want to watch a TV show, I'd check out Jericho.
I'm also going to give you TV show suggestions, which is a little different from my usual. But Master of None Season 2 just came out. Aziz Ansari is really, really great. And the seasons go by really quick. There's not a whole lot of episodes, but they're so well done. And they're just so accurate to real life. And that's what makes them so funny. I feel like. So the cinematography is great, the story's great, the music's great. It's funny, it's super real. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll lose 15 pounds, all that. But yeah, I definitely recommend Master of None on Netflix. And then one other quick thing. The TV show The Exorcist, which I loved, got renewed for season 2. So watch season 1. It's really, really good. It's based on the movie, and the show's really good. So check that out.
All right. That's going to do it for this week, everybody. Make sure to check us out on Twitter at Sunny and PHX Pod. And thank you for listening. Tune in next week and go Suns.